I remember the day like it was yesterday. You know, the Mayans might have predicted the end of the world in 2012, which is now long forgotten because December the 21st, 12/21/12 came and went with no event. But actually, the end of the world wasn't then. It was on a rainy Saturday, 1963. Unbeknownst to much of the world, on that rainy Saturday, I got in a car and I went to school. Now, that was really weird. You didn't go to school on a Saturday, at least not in my neighborhood and not at that school. I went to the school on a rainy Saturday and there was not a soul there. And I remember that it looked weird because I had never been to school on a Saturday. And I walked down the empty corridors and across the empty parking lot and saw the empty playground. And it had a completely different experience for me. And then I went to the principal's office. Now, I don't know about you, but in elementary school, the idea of going to the principal's office was not exactly interesting or exciting or something that you looked forward to. But there I found myself in the principal's office on a rainy Saturday in 1963. And for the next 2 or 3 hours, I didn't know what was happening. I took a series of tests, played some games, and did some other things, answered a bunch of questions, and then I left and went home and didn't think much more about it. And then on the next Monday, or perhaps it was Tuesday, the world ended as I knew it. I was moved from the first grade, where I was at the time, into the second grade. For a while, I thought I was cool. That was the coolest thing in the world. I have been moved up a grade. That must mean something good about me, right? I must be really exciting, cool, or whatever. But it actually turned out to be miserable for many, many, many years because I was totally socially inept, unprepared, younger than everybody. On top of that, I already was awkward, had not very good social skills, and beyond that was a late bloomer physically. So I was pretty small to boot. And so that was my life for the next 11 years until I graduated from high school. I was behind socially. I was inept. I was uncomfortable. I was backward. I did not know how to start or enter conversations well, pleasantly, or smoothly. Everything was clumsy, awkward, and, of course, all of the kids, like kids do at that age, were ruthless in their torment of my torment, right? I cannot remember all of the names that I got called. Country cow is the one that sticks out for the most part. And I think the reason that happened is because in the summertime, two things happened. One, my brother and sister and I went to my mom's farm, my mom's dad's farm. So there was a dairy farm that he used to run, and we used to go there in the summer and help. Haul hay, milk cows, do kind of farming things. And I was going to school in California, and that was in Wyoming. So we had this long trek, often leaving the day school was out and moving across 1,000 miles, which as a kid, that was forever, right? Sometimes we took the train, sometimes we drove. And then I would come back to school, and they would call me Country Cow, I think because they knew I went to the farm. It didn't help that I wore Levi's when Levi's weren't fashionable, and that I wore hiking boots to school when, of course, those were atrocious. All of those things added insult to injury and my misery growing up. So to say I was an outcast would be a generous understatement. To say that I was socially awkward would be putting it extremely mildly, and to say that I was alone, isolated, and without friends would be also an understatement. It was so bad that by the time I got to intermediate school, which in California was 7th and 8th grade, some places it's junior high, 7, 8, 9, but it was 7, 8 intermediate school where we went. I was with a group of boys in the Boy Scouts at church, and I resorted to rushing to the local grocery store and stealing candy bars so that I could give them to the boys that I was with so that they would like me. It was how desperate I was to figure out how to make friends. Of course, that didn't work. They ate the candy bars and still called me names and treated me badly. That went on all the way through high school. In high school, things didn't get any better. I was the nerd. I had obviously skipping a grade. It was something about those test results that made that the right answer and the right thing to do from an intellectual or an educational point of view. So I got good grades and was blessed in that regard, but my ability to get along with everybody was a negative number. On a scale of 1 to 10, probably a negative 10 would have been the right amount. So during my whole high school experience, I was a band nerd on top of it. I was a musician and played several instruments. That further isolated me from the mainstream of people at school. I did not have any friends, so I spent all of my lunch hours in the library reading the Handbook of Chemistry and Physics and other encyclopedias, because I had taken a fancy to chemistry as well in my isolation. So then I began studying chemistry and reading encyclopedias at lunch. My entire high school experience passed that way. Not a good portent for a healthy adulthood. I graduated from high school early. In my senior year of high school, I had been taking classes across the street at the local college because I was in what is now called advanced placement classes and so forth. So that further isolated me, because there were only half a dozen of us that were also as seniors taking classes at the college across the street, which added, even one more layer of excitement to my negative social experience. All of this left me, one would think, permanently disabled in the area of social skills and ability to get along with people. So that's where I was as I left high school. I ended up going to college on a scholarship, no surprise. And when I got to college, I was staying in the dorms. And I brought all of my great habits with me, and nothing had changed about me. But the interesting thing was I actually got to the dorms a couple of days early. And the dorms were empty. I was on the top floor of a dormitory with a really long hall. And the dorms are built different. This one had a big long hall with 30-something rooms off the sides of the hall, but you could see all the way down the end of the hall. And so it was quite a long hallway. But nobody was there. I was the first person in the dorm. And I remember coming outside my room, looking down this long hall at all of the closed doors, thinking, I don't know any of these people. I don't know anything about what's going to happen here. I am young. I'm not even 18. I can't do anything that you might do at college anyway. I'm not 18, not of legal age. I can't do anything. I am socially inept. I am backwards. I am clumsy. I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to make friends. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. This is really going to suck. I remember thinking all that and having this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. And as I stood there, staring down this long, empty hall, all of a sudden, like a bolt of lightning, a thought penetrated my mind, like all the way to the core of my soul. And this was it. I thought, now wait a minute. These people that are not here yet, they don't know me. They don't know that I am a bumbling, socially inept, bookworm, nerd, backward social kid that doesn't know anything about how to do that. They don't know any of that. What if I don't tell them? What if I just don't tell them? I became so fascinated with that thought that they didn't know and would have no way of knowing any of that, another bolt of lightning came, and that was this. I realized at that second I had the power to completely change my life. These people didn't know me at all, and they would only know what I showed them and what I told them. And at that moment, I made a monumental, life-changing, totally revolutionary decision. I decided I'm just not going to do that. I'm no longer going to be that uncomfortable, backward, inept, socially inept, awkward person. And then I started thinking about what I would do and all of that stuff. That's a much, much longer story. But the point is, from that moment on, my life completely changed. I was successful at college. I ended up with more scholarships. I ended up climbing corporate ladders and doing all kinds of stuff. But everything was traced to that revolutionary second, that revolutionary moment when I realized that I had complete control of my destiny. Because every single person that interacted with me would only know what I showed them. Okay, now let's wave a curtain across the stage, and that's the end of the story. So I just told you a story. I told you a true story. It's a story about me, and all of that is true, and all of it really happened. And the success that I have had in my life since then has been nothing short of astounding. I've had 5 very successful careers. I've had 35 years as a recording studio owner working with beginners and Grammy winners. I am a performing artist. I have a dozen or so albums up with music still selling today on Amazon and iTunes. I do jazz and I do techno. I have been a C-level executive in the United States and in Canada. I have spoken around the world on different stages. I was in a very, very intense and competitive commodity market with deregulated electricity, excuse me, which had lots of politics and games and had to do with the Enron guys that went to jail in 2002 and 3 and all of that stuff that happened around that. So very intense, and a number of other things that I've done. So my life literally pivoted around that point. So all of it is true, and everything that happened since then, no exaggeration, has been wildly successful and completely, one could think, unrelated to the life that I'd had up to that point. So I told you that story for a reason, and here's the reason. I wanted to give you an example of what it's like to tell a story, to get a connection to people. So now I have a question, and the question for those who might watch this later, I want you to pause this and think about it. And for those that are watching now, you can put questions in the chat box. And you can, I want also perhaps, it's 2 parts. The first one is, what happened to you when I told the story? What did I do by telling the story? What was your experience? Excuse me. What was your experience with me telling that story? And I want you to think about that. And if you're watching this later or on YouTube, think about what you felt like and what happened for you during that story. And the second thing, I'm going to give whoever wants to a chance to visit here or to enter into the Hangout and talk, or I'll look at the dialog box and answer the questions. Could you give me an example from your own life of an event that happened to you that was significant? Now, it doesn't have to be character-changing or life-changing like mine was. It might be a small event. There can be small ones and large ones, and we'll talk about those later. So 2 parts to the question. Number 1, what happened? What did I do? What happened to you during that story? And the second one is, what is an example of an event that happened to you that made some change in your life that was significant enough that you remember it now? All right, so I'm going to take a look and see in the chat box. So the first one in the chat box about answering the question, which is, I felt sad almost, wondering what would have happened if you hadn't made that decision during college. Well, that's a really interesting question. I guess I don't know. I guess I'll never know. But I certainly wouldn't have done anywhere near the things that I have done. I certainly wouldn't have created the life, the businesses, and the success that I have created, and also the failures. I mean, I've succeeded and failured on epic proportions, because something about that moment taught me that I could control the outcome. Sometimes it's been good, sometimes it's been bad, sometimes they were mile-high skyscrapers, and sometimes on the concrete on my nose. But the point is, we have control. So the other comment was a bit angry at bullies. They didn't have wild success. They probably didn't have wild success. It's interesting that you discovered that early on in life. So that's several points. There's been a lot more awareness of the bullying that goes on in schools. I have a client right now who is dealing with that issue with one of his children. And bullying is going on with that child, and is having some negative impact on the kid's ability to perform and self-esteem and so forth, like we expect it does, and know it does now. But at that time, we didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. I mean, there was some lip service given to it and so forth. And the other thing is the speculation that maybe those that engaged in that kind of bullying wouldn't have had success. I don't know. You never know what kind of revelations or moments of turning point come into people's lives. All right, so let's see if there are other people who have had, excuse me, incidents, examples of things happen in your life. So I see. I'm going to go look at the comment thing. I see Joy on the Hangout. Do you have anything you'd like to comment on about any incident in your life that caused some significant change?
Hello. Well, it's funny because I didn't quite, have that experience in school. I had lots of friends. Can you hear me? You can hear me all right, right? Yeah. So, um, I guess, so looking at that, I'm trying to then discover, what sort of, stories I could come up with for, my various businesses. I mean, some of the stories, well, for example, like have an antiques business. Well, that shaped me from an early age because, of course, my parents were involved in it, and I was dragged to every auction sale, flea market, I mean, everything all the time. I was just, that was just something that we did. So because of that, I grew a great love for all things, antiques and the stories even behind the items, like, the person who worked in that, on that item 300 years ago, like all that. So, it's not quite related, but it certainly shaped me and how I look at the world, and even it affects, my travel decisions and things that I would purchase for my own house, furnishings, all that kind of stuff. So it's had a long-lasting effect in that respect.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Go ahead and mute that again. So there's a perfect example, even though you were a bit hesitant about whether or not that example, it doesn't need to be anything like anyone else's. And that's the beauty of this. The purpose of this whole Hangout and this series, now we're going to do a series of 3 Hangouts on story, is that they're unique. And so what you're telling me is, you said it. You said, I was dragged to every flea market and auction sale as a child. It left a lasting impression on me. 1, you have become an expert in antiques. 2, it also influences your buying decisions now about what you furnish with, how you furnish, and where you get it. So that is a perfect example of someone who had an experience, and that was over an extended period of time, as mine was, going to all these sales and auctions and so forth, and seeing the beauty in antiques as opposed to that's just some used garbage. So that's really good. Thank you. I hope all of you listening now or later can go through that idea of understanding what happened, about your own reaction to my story, and then also think about what pivotal examples happen in your life. So now let's talk about story itself. And excuse me. So why are we here? Well, we're here in this Hangout and the next 3 Hangouts to help you understand. If you have a business, if you have a message, or if you have a mission in your mind and something you're trying to accomplish of any kind, story is key. I cannot tell you loud enough how important this is. Every single powerful speaker, every single successful online marketer are using story as one of the big pillars, not just an add-on, pillars to their business. So why we're here is we're going to take the next 3 Hangouts to learn about that. I promised you in this Hangout 3 things. We're going to talk about why story is so important. Excuse me, why it's important, what kind of events matter, and then I'm going to give you some keys to helping you turn your story into something important. A hook, a magnet, a powerful thing that you can use in your business or your effort to spread a message. I had a recent opportunity to hear a fellow named Bo Eason speak, who's world-renowned. He's done a solo Broadway play called The Runt of the Litter. He was invited to speak to all the finance ministers of the G8 in Europe. I mean, some pretty heavy-duty stuff, right? I've heard him speak 3 times. And each of those times he's told a story. The same story. Now, it was different. Some was longer, some had more detail, some had different people in it and everything else, but the story is of his life, started when he was 9, and it talks about his own personal dedication to football. He became a great football player, and all that sort of thing. So my point is simply this. One of the great speakers who is invited on world stages around the world right now uses this same technique. Many internet marketers that you are probably familiar with, big names, use and start their videos and their events with story. Why? Because it's effective, because it's powerful, because it connects, because it draws people to them. So we are here in this one and the next 2 Hangouts to learn how to do that. Okay? So the partial answer to the first question, why are we here and why does story matter, which is the first of the 3 things I said we cover, is first of all because it works. So, you know, you don't want to discard things that work. It works, and it works in almost every situation, and it works over and over again. And I have yet to find a prospect or a client that I've interviewed that we can't find powerful and important ways to connect their story to their business and to their client. You might think, and I know I hear this all the time, I don't have anything important to say. Nothing ever happened to me, blah, blah, blah. That's just not true. You just haven't discovered, developed, and delivered your personal story. So this Hangout and the next 2 is about that. We're going to help you discover, develop, and deliver your personal story. All right. Today is the discovering the personal story. So we talked about why it's important, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we're going to explore what about the things of your life, what events matter, and then I'm going to give you some keys about how to weave those events into a story that is compelling. So before we do that, I want to talk about why we're here. So a little bit of housekeeping. This, not why we're here about the story, but this whole series of Hangouts. This whole series of Hangouts is my Speed to Profit marketing. Okay? So what I'm going to do right this second is the next 3 Hangouts, as I said, discover, develop, and deliver your personal story, and today is discover. I want to do some housekeeping here, a little bit of announcement. So I'm holding an event next week, June 30th, July 1st, and 2nd. It is my Speed to Profit Marketing Intensive. We're going to cover elements of story. We are going to cover how to do the things that we're talking. We're going to get a lot of practice at doing that, because your ability in 90 seconds to tell somebody a compelling, powerful story that makes them interested in you is the key to capturing clients. It is the key to getting people to want to work with you. And you can brush it off, and you know, people do that, and they say, well, okay, fine, cool. Go ahead. But I see all the successful people doing it, and I know that it would be successful if you chose to do that. So I'm encouraging you with all of my encouragement ability, all my heart, to think about how to apply this in your business. This one in this Hangout and the next 2. I have an event next week, Speed to Profit Marketing Intensive. We're going to cover all of that. I also have a group coaching program that meets once a week at noon on Mondays. If any of those things interest you, you see some URLs on there. speedtoprofitmarketing.com/event. There is speedtoprofitmarketing.com/group coaching as well. That URL is not on the page. And there's speedtoprofitmarketing.com/story1, and that will give you a free tool that I have developed for my very high-end private coaching clients and mastermind. And it's a free tool to help you, and it is specifically around learning to understand how to use your story to create customer hooks and magnets. All right, so the other piece I want to do real quick by way of review is this is the 21st or 22nd Hangout in the Speed to Profit Marketing series. I'm going to go on with this for a long time. I may change formats. I may move it down to 45 minutes or half an hour. I've been doing them for an hour, and it isn't because of lack of material. It just seems like people's interest or ability to come with all of the things they have to do is better when they're a little bit shorter. So I probably will shorten them, starting right after the event next week. Next week's Hangout on Wednesday is not going to happen on July 2nd. It's going to be on the 9th. We'll talk about that toward the end. But what I want to do right now is I want to review for you really quickly the things that we've covered in the Speed to Profit Marketing Hangouts that have happened so far. And there's 20 of them, so I'm going to go really fast. The first one is I taught you how to find clients online. That's really important. If you can't find clients online, you're dead. Yellow pages and interruption advertising doesn't work anymore. I taught you how to build rapport. Building rapport with clients is that feeling of connectedness, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Rapport comes when we have shared experiences, shared goals, a shared worldview, and rapport is that feeling that we know someone and we're okay being around them and like to talk to them. I taught you how to solve problems and get paid fast. Solve problems and get paid fast. Everything is about speed these days, and the faster you can solve problems, the more people like you, the more clients will come, and the more they pay you. Then I talked about something called how to build long-term relationships fast. Now, that might sound like an oxymoron, but we actually have steps that we go through in a relationship, and the internet and smartphones and all of our digital connectedness has given us the ability to go through those steps much faster than we have in the past. Then I did 2 Hangouts on HOAs. We're using a Hangout on air today. HOA magic is what I called those, number 1 and 2. What I did is I actually went through the Hangout and I showed you all the apps and tips and tricks, how to start them, how to use them, how to connect them to YouTube, and do all of that kind of stuff. So you can use this powerful tool that we're using today. Then we did 2 Hangouts on YouTube. I went and did the same thing on a YouTube channel. I showed you the apps. I showed you what a YouTube channel looked like, how to create playlists, how to manipulate your videos and do different things on there because, of course, Hangouts and YouTube are connected because Google owns YouTube. And it's fantastic for you and for me because YouTube hosts your videos for free, and it is the largest search engine, and people look up stuff on YouTube more than anywhere else. They Google stuff on YouTube. So if you're not on YouTube, you're dead. And so this was to teach you how to do that. Then I did 3 on something called the money triangle. 3 Hangouts on the money triangle. That was a killer series. The reason I did that is because the money triangle is a proprietary framework that I created for my speed to profit marketing intensive high-end coaching clients and private clients. So I did 3 Hangouts on it, a series of 3. That's 3 full hours of instruction. It takes a day and a half to cover it at the event, which we did in March. And it is powerful. In fact, if you connect the 3 corners of the money triangle, people will pour money on you, and you will serve a lot of people. If you don't believe me, go watch the Hangouts and do them. Because every single person that I know that has fulfilled the 3 corners of the money triangle make money, make substantial money, spread their message, and do a lot of good. So then I did 2 Hangouts on high-ticket items. I get questions all the time about what VIP days are, why I do them, and what happens the first time I told someone, you know, VIP days are a day where you spend a day with a mentor, and lots of high-end mentors have them. It's anywhere between $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 for the day. Excuse me. Focus totally alone on your business with total focus. Now, you don't go do that with someone if you don't think they know a lot more than you do. You don't go do that with someone you don't have a good rapport with and you don't connect well with and you can't talk well to. But someone that you connect well with, that you trust, that you know has a lot of chops in the area that you are in and that you need help in, it's well worth it. Powerful investment. So I did 2 Hangouts on that. What you do, I talked about what you do in a VIP day and why they're so important for you as a coach or consultant to have them, because it creates different ways you think about your product and service. And then I talked in another one about how to market them. And I did 2 on business explosion, how to create a business explosion right now around the principles of speed, value, and service. And the second one was around a common, huge, fatal mistake I see businesses make all the time in their effort to over-market, over-promise, and create the perception that they're cool when in fact what they're selling is less than that. So that was a fatal mistake. Excuse me. Hangout that I did. I need to. Excuse me. And then I did 3 on authenticity and marketing. I did 3 Hangouts, a series of 3 on authenticity and marketing. One of the keys that we're going to talk about later today about your story is about authenticity and why it is so important. Authenticity means, you know, nuanced, can mean a nuanced bunch of different things. The basic meaning is something that is what it appears to be. It can also mean that a person projects an image that is true to their core. In other words, they don't project an image that is false. And that doesn't mean you don't behave differently in different circumstances. Your behavior in church would be different than your behavior on a baseball field. And you would not be being inauthentic. It would just be appropriately nuanced for the situation. So that's clear. But authenticity is a state of mind, and it is a commitment that you either make or you don't make to those that interact with you in public, on your Facebook page, on your LinkedIn profile, in your business, and in your family. So it is a commitment that you make to be a transparent individual with those that you interact with. Then I did one on why social media. I went through 5 different social media, why they're critical in marketing right now, and how to maximize them for your benefit. Then I did one about the value of creating a unique value proposition and why a unique value proposition is essential. It really comes down to one thing. If you're only competing in your niche on price, you're dead. Because someone will always be able to duplicate your price advantage sooner or later and squeeze you out of business. You must have something besides price as your differentiator if you want to stay in business and grow, particularly if you want to make money and not live a grinding, sort of grindstone, nose to the grindstone life. So I talked about how to create one, what they are, what they mean, and so forth. And then the last one is avatar gold. We talked about that there's gold in your avatar, and what an avatar is your ideal customer. We talked about how to figure out who that is, how to find them online, and so forth. So those are the Hangouts that we've done. They're free, they're online, and they're on YouTube, and if you haven't seen them, you should. If you don't, eventually, and I don't really know how long, I'm going to take them down, and I'm going to turn them into a product, because they're very valuable, and they're very powerful, and they're me teaching my extreme experience. One of the things I didn't say about myself is during my commodity market experience, I had 10 years of very high pressure electricity, deregulated electricity commodity market experience, taught me a lot about product differentiation, about unique value propositions, about what kind of marketing works and doesn't work. And then that was before, and then the last 6 years I've been in the internet marketing space very successfully as a business coach. So today we're going to talk about, we just did that review. Now today we're going to move right into the discover part of your story. So I have 2 questions. What is your story and who are you? And you might think those are big, deep, powerful questions, and they are, but we're going to talk about them in detail right now. The first thing I told you I would cover is why story is important in your marketing. This might seem like, why are we talking about telling stories in a marketing business, hardcore business environment with someone who has been, a CEO, an operating officer, and high-level executive in multiple countries? Why are we talking about storytelling? And I'll tell you why. There are 3 reasons. The first one I told you a while ago is because it works, but the reason is it is important for 3 things. It creates connection. It creates rapport, or builds rapport, and provides motivation. So I'm going to say that again. Creates connection, builds rapport, and provides motivation. So what does that mean? Well, creating connection happens when you tell a story, and the elements of the story, sometimes they're similar occurrences, like maybe you had a miserable experience growing up in elementary school, and maybe you didn't. If you did, you would have been thinking about the elements of your story that were similar to mine and the ones that were different, but there would have been an element of connection there. Oh yeah, I remember, yeah, and my friends used to bully me, or not my not friends, and blah, blah, blah. And, all of those things just happen automatically when we share story. Rapport was the next piece. So it creates connection, builds rapport. Rapport is that feeling of sameness. When we have shared experiences with someone, or we have shared goals, things that we want to have happen, or a similar worldview. So let me give you some examples. The shared experiences is real easy. So if you ski and you've skied certain mountains and you meet someone that skis and they've skied those same mountains, you've had similar experiences, you immediately have 2 or 3 hours worth of conversation you can have without even thinking. If you own a certain kind of a car and you've had a miserable experience because it breaks all the time, and someone else has either a good experience with that car or a bad one, still conversation material. If you have teenagers, shared experience. Well, my teenager's really good in school and they don't give me any trouble. My teenager's terrible. They don't come home at all. They don't keep curfew, and it's hard for me to get them to do their homework. Doesn't matter. Shared experience gives you something to talk about and starts to build rapport, a feeling of sameness, a feeling of, oh, they understand me, they know me. So it creates connection and it builds rapport, and it does it faster than anything. And the reason that it does is because it strikes at the core of our emotions. It reaches into that emotional layer that we have and touches who we are. Now remember, I asked you at the beginning, who are you? One of the things that we do in Speed to Profit Marketing Intensive is we work on creating a story. That is 90 seconds. Can you tell me in 90 seconds exactly who you are? And do it in a way that is meaningful, powerful, and doesn't feel like you left a whole bunch of stuff out and you, well, yeah, that's just a little tiny bit. And you think, that's impossible. No, it's actually not impossible. It's very possible, and those that learn to do it capture audiences, capture clients, capture #1 positioning, serve a lot of people, and make a lot of money. And that's why we spend part of our time at Speed to Profit Marketing Intensive doing that very thing. So I told you why story is important. We have to cover the last one. I said it creates connection, builds rapport, and provides motivation. So here's the provide motivation. I'm assuming you're in business to sell some product or service that solves a real problem. My Speed to Profit Marketing principles and teaching is not for people that are either scam artists trying to do get rich quick, sell stuff people don't need, or any of that. I don't want them. I don't want to talk to them. Not in my universe. So if you throw all of that noise out of the discussion, automatically, boom, gone, and you're talking about real products that solve real problems for real people, then we have a common ground to talk about. So when you have someone that you know has a need and you solve that need, there's an opportunity there. Or if you have a need and you know someone solves that need, there's an opportunity there. So I do that with my clients. I find someone who's a business owner who feels invisible online, who doesn't know how to get that #1 positioning, who doesn't know how to get found, who doesn't know how to draw in more leads, more prospects. They're not doing that very well. And I teach them how to do that through the use of story and through the use of creating an online presence, right? There may be a need that I have. You will use a mundane one. I need to get my car serviced. So I need a dealer that does this particular kind of car. The story around that dealer might be that they're close, they're friendly, they do it quickly, they do it right the first time. You know, there's all kinds of possible pieces of that story that a dealership may or may not have developed based on their own wisdom and based on the facts. The third piece of it is the motivation. If you create connection and you build rapport, or that feeling of shared experience and sameness, and there is a need gap, in other words, you provide a service that that person needs, they will be motivated to buy that service from you. I'm going to say that again because it is critical to understand the flow of that connection. If you create a connection and build rapport with someone online through your video and through your messaging, and they have a need for the problem you solve elegantly and well, they will be motivated to buy from you. Okay, that simply follows because they have that feeling and connection with you. Now, if they don't need that product or service, trying to sell it to them is not only wrong, but it's stupid. It's a waste of time, and then you make an enemy out of them. So you wouldn't do that. But if there is a need there, then they will be motivated. So that is why story is important. So let's get to part 2, which is what life events matter. What life events matter in creating a story? I mean, we've all had thousands, perhaps millions of little ones, but thousands or even hundreds of significant events. So which ones matter in creating a story? I get that question all the time. The answer is easy, but until you think about it and until you get sort of direction, it can be very confusing. And the first answer people give me all the time is, nothing happened to me, I don't have anything. I always laugh when I hear that because it's such nonsense. You are a unique individual. You are shaped and designed completely uniquely. Some experiences that you had were sad, some were hard, some were big, some were little. I spoke about this on an earlier Hangout. One of the incidents in my life that shaped me was physical punishment. I was abused quite a bit as a child with kind of abuse that would be, illegal and put people in jail today. That was a significant event that shaped my life, and it also shaped me with regard to that other story, because I was always afraid I wasn't good enough, and so that kept me fearful of having interactions with other people, and it kept me withdrawn. So those are some of the consequences of that particular occurrence. So here's the thing. Here's the key. So here are the three pieces. What events matter? What events matter? Events that shape you. I call them shaping events, lessons, and vision. Shaping events, lessons, and vision. I said that slow because I want you to think about it. Some events just shape your view of things. They may have been outside events. You saw an accident. You saw a car accident. And that made you forever a lot more vigilant at corners. You always look because you remember the scream of the tires, and you know, so it just has put an imprint on you. It was a shaping event. Short, happened in 10 seconds, but it was a shaping event, right? So the first one is shaping events. The second one is lessons. That can also be shaping events, but I think of them differently. So a lesson might be, okay, let me go back to my funny story about candy bars. I stole candy bars from a grocery store. I told you that earlier about trying to make friends. Eventually, I can't remember if I got caught or something happened. I felt bad, so I told my parents. So I had to do something. I had to go to the owner of that particular store, and I had to take some money and pay him back and do the whole, you know, I stole some candy bars from you. I'm sorry. Here's some money, blah, 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 right? That was a lesson. So that event taught me a lesson about the value of, I could have been a bunch of lessons. It could have been being dumb for telling somebody. It could have been about getting caught. But the way that I chose to internalize the lesson was, I don't really want to be a thief. I don't want to feel the way that that feels about being a thief. So I learned a lesson. That was another event. Again, those are in the big scheme of things, those are pretty small events. The example was of a car accident wasn't mine. I didn't witness an accident, although I was in one, more than one, as many of you may have been. So they're shaping events and their lessons. And then the third one, I said, is vision. Events that give you a vision. Events that give you a vision of the possible. So I'll give you an example from my life. When I had was, let's see, I was 26, I think, and I was working in Phoenix at the time. Although I was in Phoenix then, and I moved away for a number of years, so I seemed to go in cycles of 13. I lived in Phoenix from 82 to 95 for 13 years, and then moved away from 95 to 2008 for 13 years, and now from 2008 to here I'm back, and this is 6 years, so I'm halfway through another 13, who knows. But anyway, I was 26, I was living in Phoenix, it was 1980, I don't know, 28, I guess, 83, 84. And I was taking some music classes for fun at a local community college, and I was in the jazz band, and I was doing some stuff, and they had asked me to actually teach a class. So I ended up teaching a class on electronic music because of the studio, and I had done a lot of stuff with electronic music. But the lesson was this: I was in the jazz band, and because I'd had a lot of professional experience, and this was a local community college, I was quite a bit better than, more accomplished as a performer than most of the folks there, and there were a couple of really good ones, but not a lot. So I went to the director and I said, hey, I'd like to put a little ensemble together. It'd be fun. I'll write some arrangements and we'll just do some, do some fun, and we'll perform when the jazz band performs at the fall concert or whatever. So he said, sure, great idea. So I did that. I wrote some arrangements. I put a little ensemble together for bass, drums, guitar, piano, sax, and trumpet. Wrote some arrangements and did some stuff. So that experience was a visionary experience because it taught me that I could put together a group, write some music, do some stuff, but more than the music itself, it taught me about having a vision of something that I could create, getting other people involved, getting them excited about the vision, creating it successfully, doing a performance, having people say, yay, and it was all cool, right? So that was another kind of experience. So those are the three kinds of things to think about. Okay, shaping events, lessons, and vision. Those are the kind of events that matter, that you use and take when you're going to create your personal story. So those are the life events that matter. And now we're going to get to the key piece, which is, what are the keys to creating a successful story? Now, today's whole hangout is just on discovering the story. The next one is going to be about developing the story, and the third one's going to be about delivering the story. All three parts are critical if you're going to make money in your business with your story, which you can do. But you can't just hear these first parts and say, okay, I've discovered a story. I know I've got a list of 17 events that happened to me. They were either shaping events or lessons or vision. I'm really clear about what they did to me. Wow. So what? Well, the so what comes in the development of the story. And then learning how to deliver it appropriately and in the right medium so that it becomes a customer hook and magnet and draws them to you by creating that rapport and that motivation to purchase from you, not just somebody, but you, if they have the problem that you solve. So whatever problem they have, there are going to be a range of people that could provide it. But there's only going to be one that could provide it the way you do. And that rapport and connection, that connection and rapport, and then that motivation to buy from you is going to come through your ability to connect, create connection, build rapport, and provide motivation to them for them to buy from you, because you solve the problem they have in the most elegant, most powerful way, and you have that connection. So that's the scope of the 3 hangouts. Right now I'm going to give you the keys to discovering your story. So we talked about why it's important. We talked about what kinds matter. And now the third part and the last part is this. What are the keys to creating a successful story? Well, they're going to be words that you hear all the time. The first one is honesty. Honesty. You have to be willing to be honest. It was a long time before I could talk about the fact that I was physically abused. And it had a huge consequence in my life. And, you know, some people think, well, you know, when you were a little kid, this, that, and the other. No, it was actually long-term, over several years. I remember in high school hiding in the locker room, waiting to change my clothes so everybody was out because I had, you know, bruises and marks on my back. And I didn't want anybody to see because I was ashamed and embarrassed, just like that happens when that happens to people, right? So it was a long time before I could deal with honestly addressing that particular series of events that went on for many, many years in my childhood. Honesty is your willingness to simply admit the events that have happened in your life. I don't even mean the bad ones, the good ones, any of them, to admit the true nature of them. Who really are you? It might be that, you know what, I'm lazy, I really don't like to finish projects, and I don't really like being around people that much. That might actually be the truth, and you might, a person could camouflage that by saying the brakes are always against me, so I never get anything finished, instead of saying, you know what, right now I've been kind of lazy and I want to change that. So honesty, and I could give examples for all of them, but you get the picture. Honesty is the key piece, the first of the 3 keys. Okay, being honest with yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you have to tell a story about every single thing that ever happened to you. I certainly haven't. But I use story very powerfully, and it draws clients to me all the time. So honesty is first. The second is authenticity. There's that authenticity word again. Being what you appear to be. So there's a funny saying that I like to use, and I'm going to say it. It is be who you is because... No, cause. I saw it on an old cowboy picture, so it's got, you know, the abbreviation. Be who you is, because if you be who you ain't, then you ain't who you is. And I love it. It says everything that needs to be said in 3 little lines. Be who you is, because if you be who you ain't, then you ain't who you is. Authenticity is so refreshing, and it is so powerful. We are tired of hype. You, me, as consumers, we're tired of hype, tired of garbage. We would like just truth, authenticity, and reality. We want trusted advisors. We want problem solved. We want it now, and we want it, you know, quickly. And we want them solved well. And we talk about a benefit map and an elegant benefit map and all that other stuff for your product or service in several other hangouts. And at the Speed to Profit marketing event. And those are all critical pieces. But right now, honesty and authenticity. And the third key is vulnerability. Honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability. It takes some courage to be vulnerable. And again, you have to be judiciously vulnerable. I'm not saying tell every piece of stuff that ever happened to you so people can abuse you or use it against you. That's not what I'm saying, and it's not what successful people do with story. But they do use powerful, sometimes negative, sometimes positive, shaping events in their life, lessons that they learn, sometimes the hard and painful way from the school of hard knocks, and sometimes the easy way from advice from a mentor, a parent. And they are then, to some degree, vulnerable because they have exposed something about themselves. Now, we as consumers like that. We are attracted to honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability. And if you don't think so, just look at the reality shows and just look at empathy, sympathy that people get when they, go on TV in real life and say things that they've done and whatever. Depending on how authentic those apologies are, the public has a tendency to forgive and forget. And to be connected with them in some way. Because why? Because, yeah, I know what that's like. I failed. I did this. I did that. Whatever. So if you don't think that that works, just look around you. Look at the successful people online that are businesses. Look at the successful speakers that are making $10, $20, $30, $50,000 a speech. Look at the successful leaders. Authenticity, honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability are the keys to creating a powerful story. All right. Now we're going to take a small review because we've done a ton of really important stuff. Today was about discovering your story. We talked about 3 areas. Why is story important? We talked about it's important because it creates connection, builds rapport, and provides motivation for a client to do business with you. We talked about what matters in events and circumstances in creating a story, and I called them shaping events, I called them lessons, and events that provide vision. So shaping events, lessons, and vision. We talked about 3 keys that help you craft, discover a story that matters. That's honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability. I can promise you, like I sit here, that those things work. They work for me, they work for my clients, and if you look around, they work all over the place. And what's astounding is they also unwork. And what I mean by that is when you see people that violate those principles. Public opinion goes against them. Negative press. Stuff happens that's bad. There is no forgiveness. He's a liar. He's not really being honest or truthful, and we all know it. It creates that overriding negative sentiment. So you see it around you in real life. You probably have a dozen examples of people close to you that have made mistakes, that have done different things, and how they handle it and how they talk about it has everything to do with whether or not they're able to move on, make amends, and create connection, rapport, and motivation. Once again, it is double true in business. And it is also the key to modern marketing. Okay, it is the key to modern marketing. And the reason is because we're on information overload. There's too much, too fast. We need trust. We need trusted advisors and so forth. So that's the conclusion of the teaching today. A couple of other housekeeping items. Remember, we've got a live event next week. We're going to have another one in September. speed2profitmarketing.com/event. If you want to be part of an intense experience that will blow your mind, that will help you create story, that will help you create positioning, that will help you, if you implement the things you learn, capture number 1 positioning, find more clients, make more money, spread your message, serve more people. It will do that. speed2profitmarketing.com/event. There is a group coaching that is going on at this time every Monday at noon. If you want to know about that, speed2profitmarketing.com/group coaching. You can inquire about that, and you can become a member of that group coaching where we teach many of these things. There are also hot seats, so you can get some private time. It's actually a screaming deal. A very, very low, modest investment to be part of that, and you get to be part of an intense group that's learning these principles and applying them in their own business, a place to ask questions, a place to get your questions vetted, a place to get your story listened to and critiqued, a place to get your website and your marketing looked at and critiqued. Powerful place, powerful people, good investment. So anyway, speed2profitmarketing.com/group coaching. And then there's also a free gift because you listen to this webinar. Hangout. Webinar is the old word, right? Hangout's the new word. And there's the URL, www.speed2profitmarketing.com/story1. Okay, the next Hangout on Air is going to be part 2. So today was Discover. In that one, we're going to talk about how do you develop a story? How do you take these shaping events and lessons and vision and turn them into a story? Okay? What you'll find right now is as you listen to people, because you've been made aware of this, you'll start to hear story in everything they talk about. The successful ones. The ones that just say, I'm so-and-so and this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. You're going to find those enormously boring, and now you know why. There's no rapport, there's no connection, there's no story, there's no basis to have an emotional exchange with that person. So the next one's July 9th. That'll be at the same time on Wednesday at noon Pacific time. It'll be really cool. Look forward to seeing you there. And the last thing is, if you want to contact me, either to talk more about the group coaching, talk more about the event, or my Speed to Profit Marketing private coaching, please do. There's a couple of ways to do it. You got Facebook? Please hit me up on Facebook. Friend me there. There's an email, coachkellanfluckiger@gmail.com. And friend me on Facebook, and let's you can send me a private message there, and let's talk. I get a lot of clients that that's how I get them. They'll get on there, send me a private message. We'll have a discussion about what this magic is for their business. And then we end up forming a mutually beneficial relationship where I can help them blow their business up, and then they can make a lot more money, serve a lot more people, and have a lot of fun. Thank you. We've come to the conclusion. This Hangout on Air is going to be over. I really appreciate everybody that came. I'm going to take a look in the chat box and see if there's any more questions. I don't see any questions right now. So thank you for being here today. We will see you next time. And until then, think about your story. Let's create it. Let's develop it. Let's deliver it. Let's get you successful in your speed to profit.